Secretario de Seguridad Interna de los Estados Unidos de América en funciones, Kevin McAleenan. En presencia del señor Presidente de la República y del Secretario de Seguridad Interna de los Estados Unidos de América, junto con la señora Ministra de Relaciones Exteriores de El Salvador, Alexandra Gil, el Ministro de Justicia y Seguridad de El Salvador, Rogelio Rivas, y otras autoridades que acompañan al Secretario de Seguridad Interna, damos inicio a este evento de firma de la Carta de por la cual el Ministerio de Justicia y Seguridad Pública y el Departamento de Seguridad Interna de los Estados Unidos de América establecen
through which both countries establish the cooperation on immigration and national security. You may take your seats. At this moment, we're going to sign this understanding on behalf of our country, on behalf of the United States of America, the Secretary of Mr. Kevin McAleen. On behalf of our country, the Minister of Justice and Public Security, Rogelio Rivas. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs of El Salvador, Alexandra Gil Tinoco. The President of the Republic observes as the witness of honor the signature of this charter. At this moment, we're going to exchange the documents signed by the authorities. A round of applause. Now we will listen to the message of the President of the Republic, Nayib Bukele.
With respect to our guest, I will say my remarks in English. Thank you everybody to be here, the media, our guest of honor, his team, the members of our government, and to everybody that is watching in the different media outlets and in social media. Today we had quite a good conversation with Secretary McAleenan. We spoke about immigration, about gangs, about economic development, about the root causes of migration, about border security, about how can we cooperate in solving those problems that we share. And before, they had discussions with our Minister of Security and Justice and with our Minister of Foreign Affairs. And we end up with a letter of intent that we signed today. It's a very comprehensive letter of intent that would translate into a lot of work that we will do together in the upcoming weeks and months. One of the things is that we want to generate our own capacity to control the borders. We already have a border patrol. We have been working with Guatemala, with Honduras. We have been working with the U.S. government in improving our border patrols, not only for immigration, but also for crime, also for gangs that have been crossing the borders. We've been improving that, but we want to improve it a lot more. And we want to do it with the help of the United States, but also with the concurrence of the countries that we share borders with. That's very important for everybody. And that's one of the keystones of cornerstones of our alliance. The second one is that we want to empower, and the United States government wants to help us in fighting crime. Remember, fighting crime is not only one of the main drivers of immigration that we have in El Salvador. If you ask any Salvadoran at the southern border of the United States, they will tell you that they are fleeing the country because of crime, because of gangs, and because of lack of opportunity and jobs. So fighting crime is one of the best ways to reduce immigration. And that's a key point, and also another cornerstone of the agreement that we signed, because the United States is also interested in helping us fighting the gangs and fighting crime. And remember, crime is not only gangs, but also international crime, human smugglers, human traffickers. Some of these people, human traffickers and human smugglers, they kidnap our kids and sell their organs. They kidnap our girls and sell them as sex slaves. I mean, and even boys, of course. So we cannot allow that. We have been capturing this criminal organizations. We have made some great achievements, but we can do a lot more. And we want to work together so we can reduce crime in all of its forms, including, of course, human smuggling, human trafficking, and one of the things that not only affects Salvadorans, but also is one of the drivers of immigration, which is gang violence and gang crimes. And these organizations, MS-13 and M18, R and S, because M18 is divided in two gangs. The other cornerstone of our agreement is sharing information. Right now, it may sound like a small thing, sharing information, but it is not. For example, right now, we have people crossing into our borders, into our customs, into our airport, and with fake passports. And these are members of criminal organizations that this is probably not exactly linked to immigration, but it's linked to other crimes like narco traffic, narco activity, and terrorist organizations, etc. And if we share information with biometrics at the airport, with biometrics at our border crossings, etc., we might be able to share more information in real time with U.S. With the U.S. government, so we can capture these people that are using fake passports and fake documents and going through our borders or going through our airport. In that case, we will use the biometrics, and we use the information from other countries, third countries, that might share the information with us, that will share the information with us, and then we'll share this information in real time, so we will get warnings if somebody wants to enter into a country with a fake passport or with a fake identity, or if it's being wanted in some places in the world, so we can capture him. And that information sharing will drastically reduce crime also, and will hit on the criminal organizations as well. And also, we spoke about the legal alternatives viable for for Salvadorans living in the United States in different status. In the United States, we have Salvadorans living with residence or with citizenship. They have dual citizenship. Then we have Salvadorans that have kids that are U.S. born. And we have some people that are in the TPS agreement or DACA. We have people that are undocumented. So we have an ongoing dialogue with the alternative legal and viable solutions for Salvadorans in the United States, of course, including the current mechanisms, but also looking forward into other mechanisms so we can help them, including the facilitation of working visas for people living here that want to migrate legally to the United States to work. We have been looking into and we actually have received already some a number of working visas that we can provide here, but we're looking to that number to increase. So this is I think this is a very comprehensive approach. We're looking into controlling the border. We're looking into, well, I mean, we're already controlling the border, doing better in controlling the border. We're looking into fighting crime, fighting international crime and terrorism. We're looking into human smugglers and human traffickers. We're looking into fighting gangs, which is part of organized crime, but also one of the main drivers of immigration. And we also spoke about economic growth. We share the two main drivers of immigration is violence, physical violence, and lack of jobs and economic growth. So if we make improvements on those two fronts, of course migration will reduce. And it had actually been reduced in this almost 3 months of our administration, and we think at the same time that conditions are improving in security and the economy, migration will tend to go to zero, because that should be the goal of any country. Having its people living happy in their country with opportunities, with jobs in their country, feeling safe in their country. And of course that is not going to be done or be achieved in 3 months or in 100 days or in 6 months. But at least we have been seeing clear tendencies to going in that path. And that the things that we want to achieve do not seem that far. If you see, for example, the homicide rate, how it has been dropped in the last 2 months. If you see, for example, the drop in other types of crimes that crack down on gangs, we have the enthusiasm of the private business community of investing in El Salvador. If you see all that, it looks like we will achieve our goals pretty soon. It will take a while. Rome wasn't built in a day. El Salvador, of course, will not be built in a day, but we will achieve our goals, and that will, of course, translate into what I call the end of forceful migration, and not people fleeing our country because they feel unsafe, or they being threatened by gangs, or because they cannot find a job, or because of both reasons. So we're very happy with this agreement. This agreement has been discussed and redacted in the last 2 days, and now with a meeting we had with Secretary McAleenan, I think it was a very, very positive conversation. And I mean, he already has met 5 times the Minister of Security. Has the third time we meet, and I'm sure we're gonna be partners, allies, and friends. And we're going to do what's best for El Salvador, and we're going to do what's best for the United States. And that's not a thing that's it's opposite. I mean, we can do a symbiotic relationship, and of course, that's the best for everybody is the way to go. Thank you very much.
Escucharemos a continuación las palabras del secretario.
Listen to the remarks of the Homeland Security, Kevin McAleenan.
Good afternoon. Thank you, President Bukele, Minister Hill, Minister Rivas, the government of El Salvador, for the opportunity to join you again in San Salvador for my second visit during your administration to continue to build on our partnership and work towards regional safety and security. El Salvador has been and continues to be a close neighbor, a friend, and a critical partner in promoting security and prosperity in the region. It's been a pleasure to work with you and your administration toward development of a shared regional approach to protection and migration, and to strategize at a bilateral level on targeting the security and migration challenges uniquely faced by El Salvador. President Bukele, I commend your commitment to improving domestic security and economic prosperity in El Salvador. It's very clear in the first few months of your administration you've made tremendous progress in enhancing that security, reducing gang violence and homicides, restoring the social fabric of affected communities, and inspiring and encouraging investment and innovation in your country. It's very clear that you understand well that addressing irregular migration or forced migration due to economic or security concerns requires a comprehensive approach, and El Salvador plays a unique role in responding to this challenging phenomenon in the region. I'd like to applaud El Salvador's decision to join the UN High Commissioner for Refugees' Comprehensive Regional Protection and Solutions Framework, a regional initiative that aims to bolster asylum systems and further strengthen safe space networks and expand resettlement programs. The United States has already seen significant progress from your efforts. Since your inauguration just 3 months ago, CBP has observed a 60% decrease in crossings at the U.S. southwest border for individuals from El Salvador, demonstrating the success of your initiatives on both security and economic opportunity. DHS appreciates the continued opportunity to work closely with our Salvadoran counterparts to address the crisis in the region, and at the same time share an understanding that our collaborative work, sharing best practices, can be expanded for the benefit of both countries. And that's why I'm very pleased to sign this letter of intent with my counterpart ministers today to really strengthen and direct that bilateral cooperation through 4 key lines of effort. First, the United States intends to provide support in both border security and law enforcement with a shared goal of deterring irregular migration and significantly decreasing gang violence, targeting MS-13 and other gangs, and human smuggling activity in El Salvador. In this border security arrangement, I've offered the full support of the Department of Homeland Security and its component agencies to enhance the law enforcement capacity in El Salvador, and our professionals will work alongside their Salvadoran police counterparts on border security, migration, prosperity, and protection programs to reduce that transnational criminal activity and promote peace and stability in El Salvador. We want to protect vulnerable populations. We want to protect them from the promises of coyotes that don't care about their safety and really focus on human trafficking. Second, the United States and El Salvador intend to expand our cooperation on information sharing through biometric data sharing with the purpose of identifying potential security and criminal threats to both our nations. And third, the U.S. and El Salvador intend to cooperate closely on building asylum and protection capacity to protect the region's most vulnerable populations. Fourth, the United States and El Salvador have agreed to ongoing discussions on the status of Salvadorans in the United States, to include working together to expand access for Salvadorans to U.S. visas, such as those that support employment in the agricultural sector. And in addition, the United States and El Salvador intend to continue our dialogue on working together to reduce non-tariff trade barriers, to promote foreign investment in El Salvador, and collaborating on trade facilitation and customs enhancement, supporting that investment climate to aid further development and economic growth. I look forward to discussing these initiatives further with Ministers Rivas and Hill during my visit, along with Salvadoran private sector and civil society leaders, as well as the Bilateral Migration Task Force. The U.S. is committed to being a good neighbor to El Salvador, just as your government's leadership has demonstrated that to the United States. And I look forward to partnering on these programs to target our shared goals and expanding our cooperation in these areas. Thank you again, Mr. President, for your partnership and for hosting us for this very productive discussion today.
Thank you, Secretary McAleen.
Tendremos a continuación un espacio para preguntas y respuestas.
Now we will have the opportunity for the questions of the press. We are going to start with Melissa Pacheco of La Prensa Gráfica. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Secretary, could you please confirm if this agreement that you have signed is part of the plan for safe countries? Then El Salvador is becoming a third safe country. And President, could you please explain what are the actions that are going to be undertaken consistent in the framework of this agreement and the Border Patrol?
Thank you. I can confirm it. This is not a safe third country agreement. This is a letter of intent to collaborate on a broad basis on law enforcement and countering gangs, increasing border security, information sharing, and economic vitality, as well as supporting the Salvadorans' own initiative on developing asylum and protection capacity in concert with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees.
Well, yes, thank you. This is, the Secretary McAleen just said this is not a third safe or fourth safe country or anything. This is a letter of intent and the issues that we want to work together on. And the immediate things that we want to do are probably things that we have been doing in the recent days or weeks, but we will empower them more. For example, the Border Patrol is not something that we're going to start today. We have been doing this for some weeks now, and it has been quite a success. We have arrested human traffickers, we have arrested human smugglers, we have arrested gang members that want to cross the borders, we have arrested people that wanted to, even people that want to come in El Salvador to commit crimes. These border patrols are very, very important. And they have been asked not only by the United States, also Guatemala, for example, has been asking for us to do more border patrolling, since our crackdown on gangs has made some gang members to flee to Guatemala. And we have a responsibility to stop that and capture them at the border. So we have a commitment to increase the capacities of our border patrol, and the United States has the commitment to help us in doing that. The other thing that is going to be implemented shortly is the information sharing and the biometrics in the airport and the borders. We want to increase our technology so we can capture people that are using fake documents or fake passports to get into or out of the country. The other thing is that we want to continue our dialogue to seek for legal, viable alternatives to Salvadorans living in the United States, and for the Salvadorans that want to work legally in the United States. And for that, we have been discussing the visa program, for example, the working visa program, for example, but also the legal status of Salvadoran in the United States. This is an ongoing discussion. The other thing is that we want to improve commerce, trade, and investment with the United States, so we will have economic growth in our country, and that will, of course, reduce immigration, and of course, that will make the conditions of people living here better by having a decent job with a decent pay and a home and not a necessity to flee. The other thing is to fight gangs. The United States government is able to help us in fighting gangs, MS-13, M18, etc., which is very important for us for two reasons. First, because of the safety of our people, but second, because also is one of the drivers of immigration, people fleeing the insecurity that we are still facing in our country, even though the crime has gone down very rapidly and very significantly. We're still not in the numbers we want to be. We still want to lower it more, and having the help of the U.S. government in doing that is very important. So I think this, more than an agreement, of course, it's important, the signature, that we signed this, but more than the agreement is that the partnership and the friendship, that the alliance that we have with the United States, it's one step stronger. And that will, of course, will lead us, if we're going into the right path and we're going we're doing the right things, that of course will give us good results at the end. So we're looking forward to that. We're looking for having those good results. But the actions that we're taking right now, and we'll start to take in the days and weeks to come, will be immediately felt by the people of El Salvador, that will eventually not feel the need or the urge to migrate to the United States, because we will provide the safety and the economical environment for them to not to feel the urge and the need to flee to another country.
Seguimos con Gerardo Torres de Canal 10.
Continue with Gerardo Torres, Channel 10. Secretary, please could you confirm the figures of the trends for irregular immigration of El Salvador towards the border? President, I would also like to know, because as the former ambassador said, that the economic growth in El Salvador is going to be empowered. So what are you going to do in this sense? And also the policies or the guidelines of the foreign policy for the communities of Salvadorans. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
I can confirm the numbers of Salvadoran citizens arriving at the U.S. Southwest border. In the month of May, that number was over 16,000. Right now, we're on pace in August for around 6,000. So we're expecting a 60% drop in just the 3 months since President Bukele has been inaugurated. So we've seen significant progress in terms of forced migration from El Salvador.
On the question about the economic growth, like the previous U.S. ambassador to El Salvador said, this is the time of economic growth in El Salvador for several reasons. One of the reasons is that now we have a government in place that is no anti-business but pro-business. We have been reducing also the barriers of investment. For example, some of U.S. companies here in the United States, they say we have put operations in El Salvador because we're closer to the United States, closer than other countries, for example, China or Vietnam. But the problem is that before, their products took 5-6 days in customs to be cleared. So our competitive advantage was our closeness to the United States was eroded by the bureaucracy in customs. So making customs faster, reducing tramitology by reducing unnecessary bureaucracy, by having pro-business government with all of the agencies of the government in place that are trying to attract investment, not only Proesa, but also the Secretary of Commerce. We even have a task force for getting new investments in El Salvador. And like the previous ambassador said, right now, companies feel, not only U.S. companies in El Salvador, but also other companies, other international investments, and of course national and private investment too, they feel that this is the time to invest in El Salvador. And if you see at the region, you have Nicaragua, for example, in turmoil, you have Honduras with problems. So it looks like it's the time to invest here. El Salvador has a very stable economy. Our deficit is very low compared to other deficits in the region. We have a hub. We're an airline hub in our airport. There's no risk for devaluation in our currency. And now we have a pro-business government. So, and we're trying to reduce the hassle of making business and exporting or importing goods. We spoke with Secretary Ross when he came for the inauguration, Secretary of Commerce of the United States, and he analyzed what was happening in El Salvador, and he gave us a list of 12 things that El Salvador should do to improve our competitiveness. And one of the things that was very important to improve our competitiveness and increase industries like tourism, for example, is to crack down on violence. And gang violence, mostly, but also other violence. So cracking down on violence, for example, and getting the homicide rate go down, the most important reason to do it is because we're making the lives making people feel and live safer. But the byproduct is the increase in investment, because investors will feel more willing to put their money in a country that is safe, that has better economic growth, that has a pro-business government, that has clear rules. So, and they see our partnership and our alliance with the United States, and that's a very magnet for investors, because most of the products that are made are sold in the United States. So you want a good relationship, a country that has a good relationship with the United States, so your investments will be safe and you will make a profit, which at the end of the time is what companies seek. So I think El Salvador, if you look at tourism, for example, the things we're doing with Surf City, if you look at manufacturing, if you look at stability, democratic stability, we have stable and independent institutions. I mean, we had fair and free elections that nobody contested. So all of that gives us legitimacy, makes us more attractive for foreign and local investment. So, and also, the United States government has been helping us in that. For example, there's a natural gas plant that will be built in Acajutla, that's going to cost $800 million. It was $300 million of those were financed by the U.S. government with their overseas private international corporation, OPEC. It's a government agency, a U.S. government agency. They financed $300 million for this project that is going to be built in El Salvador. It's going to create thousands of jobs. And we're looking into other projects like Puerto de Cutuco, for example, Puerto de la Unión, and other projects as well that we're gonna be able to do because of this partnership with the United States.
First question will be from Michelle Hackman, Wall Street Journal.
Secretary McAleenan, your agency has been working on similar agreements with at least something like 5 different countries in the region. Can you give us an update on where those agreements stand, what they'll cover, when we can expect to see them, and do you expect any of those to be safe third country agreements? Also, Homeland Security secretaries since Jay Johnson have been working on similar agreements about security, data sharing, things like that. What makes you think, and that hasn't really stemmed the flow of migration north, what makes you think that this agreement will change things?
Thanks for your question. So first and foremost, this region is actually vital for U.S. national security interests and for U.S. economic interests. This is our neighborhood. So certainly as Acting Secretary of Homeland Security, I'm engaging regularly in the region. I've been to Central America each month that I've been in this acting position. And we're approaching this from both a regional perspective, working together as ministers of security on shared challenges from transnational crime, but also on a bilateral perspective. Each partner has a different domestic situation, a different security capability, a different set of drivers on migration. For instance, between Guatemala and El Salvador, in Guatemala, 30% of the migration to the U.S. this year has come from Guatemala, and about 80% transits Guatemala. So focusing on the human smuggling aspects and asylum capacity has made sense with our agreements with Guatemala. For El Salvador, it's only 10% coming from and closer to 0 actually transiting El Salvador because of their border controls. So it's a very different posture. And so our agreements are tailored to our bilateral partnerships and are focused on those areas that make sense. They all have an element of attacking human smugglers, people that are preying on vulnerable populations in the region. We do want to foster economic investment and development. That's why we're talking about lawful access to U.S. visas in each of these countries as well. But very different situations, very different challenges and opportunities, different leadership moments, a brand new administration that's taking aggressive action versus administrations that are in their last few months. So we're going to meet our partners where they are and engage on productive development together. And some of that will involve asylum cooperation agreements where we recognize each other's asylum systems, and that helps us ensure the integrity of migration flows. But in other countries, we're not going to need that type of partnership. It'll be more operational or capacity building. Thanks for your question.
Second and final question, Amna Nawaz, PBS NewsHour.
Mr. Secretary, hi. I want to pick up on the number you mentioned about the 60% decrease in Salvadorans crossing the U.S. border. It's also true border crossings as a whole have reduced recently. President Bukele mentioned wanting to get that migration number down to 0. Is that your goal as well? How do you measure success based on these kinds of agreements? And a related question to President Bukele, if you don't mind, a lot of the focus has been on economic investment and development and job training. As you know, and as I have seen in my time on the border, families who don't believe that their children are safe will take desperate measures to feel they are safe. So what specifically are you asking from the U.S. to help address your security challenges here?
So in terms of the goal for a reduction of unlawful border crossings in the United States, the desire is to have a secure and well-managed border. We want to return to historic lows so that really we're not seeing a flow of vulnerable families and children that are responding to weaknesses in the legal framework in the United States or to the types of policy objectives that the president here is trying to counter, forced migration where it's either due to security concerns or lack of economic opportunity. So we have those dual goals. We want to strengthen our system on the U.S. side but we also want to support partners in the region with their security situations. And really, the primary driver I've seen in the region in our interviews with migrants coming to the U.S. border is, frankly, a gap in that economic opportunity. That's consistent across the three major sending countries in Central America, as well as those still arriving from the 5 states in Mexico, of southern Mexico. So those are the drivers we want to attack together and to make an impact. But we want a well-managed, controlled border where we're not seeing record numbers, especially of families and children that present very challenging situations that are risking their lives in the hands of smugglers. We want them to be able to stay safe, close to home, and have opportunity there so that we can manage, just focused on the criminals and smugglers trying to exploit our border instead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, several things. I think Secretary McAleenan just said two different numbers that we can put them together and get another number. He just said that 40% of the immigration of immigrants at the southern border of the United States are coming from Guatemala. 30% from Guatemala and 10% from other people crossing the border through Guatemala. But only 10% is crossing from El Salvador. Only 10. That's 4 times less. One. Second, in May 2019, that was the month previous of the month prior to our administration, there were 16,000 Salvadorans trying to cross the U.S. southern border. Right now, that number has gone down to 6,000. So it's a decrease of 60%. So we are already at 4% of what it was before. Because we had 10%, then you subtract the 60% out of it. So we have 4% of what we had in May. I mean, out of the total. 100% of migrants trying to cross the southern border. So, of course, that speaks tons of what we have done together, what the United States government has done, what we have done. Also, it speaks a lot of the hope that people have with this administration. If you go around in the street and you ask people randomly, you will find that most of the people are putting their hopes on this administration, not only in security, but also on economic growth, health, education, housing, water supply, everything, even tourism. I mean, people are going, we announced Surf City, for example, and we have a lot of business people, not only big ones, but middle and small businesses, going and buying land or buying houses in the areas that we announced that we're making Surf City on. We haven't spent $1 in Surf City yet, but the private community is already investing millions of dollars because we announced Surf City. So there's a lot of hope in what this administration will achieve. So that makes, I mean, of course that would not stop everybody, but it might stop some people that may say, hey, I'm gonna wait a while to see what's happening here. Maybe I can find a job in my own. I mean, like you said, nobody risks their lives, leaves their home, their families, to cross 3 borders, a desert, rivers, facing natural risk, facing gangs of people that will kidnap kids, etc. I mean, nobody does that because, I mean, they want to have fun doing that. They do it because they feel that it's their only way forward, because they won't find security, they won't find a job, they're not able to feed their family. So they will look into something that it's sometimes even worse, and try to cross a desert, for example, to find prosperity, in this case in the United States. You can find other examples in the world. For example, people trying to flee some places in Africa through the Mediterranean Ocean and drowning on the Mediterranean Ocean trying to reach Europe because they will find a future in Europe. But if somebody has enough things at home, and you don't need to be a first world country with everything. You look at Costa Rica, for example. They're not a first world country, not at all. Their deficit is 16 times greater than ours. I mean, they have their own problems. But you don't have a lot of Costa Ricans trying to go through the U.S. southern border. Because Costa Ricans historically have been doing things a little better than what we have done. So we don't have to be Switzerland or Finland. We can do better, even better than Costa Rica, right? So I think there's a lot of hope. I mean, there are things that we have done, like dropping the homicide rate from over 10 to 3.9, but it's also the hope that things will get better in the future. I think that, and you can quantify it. I mean, the homicide rate, you can quantify the amount of people fleeing the country, you can quantify that too. The percentage of the people fleeing the country, because you can say, oh, well, other countries have also reduced. Yeah, but you can look at the overall percentage, is more, and the reduction, and it's less the amount that the people are fleeing our country in contrast to other countries around. So you can see the reasons. Now, what specific things have we asked from the U.S. government? I always said that you cannot ask for free money or ask for handouts or a blank check and say, hey, you have to give me money, right? It's not fair. It's not right. It's not the way to do it, and it's not. And that's. I mean, you don't ask for other people's money, but they can help a lot. For example, his remarks right now. That helps a lot. We have asked, for example, that El Salvador right now has a warning level 3 by the U.S. Department of State. Like if you want to travel to El Salvador, it will give you a warning level 3, and that means reconsider travel. So a lot of people will say, I want to go to the nice surfing beaches in El Salvador, but a warning will pop up that says reconsider travel. But since we have lowered the crime rate, and we have lowered most of it, and it has been also said by the Attorney General and by other independent institutions in El Salvador, the crime rate has gone significantly down, 60% reduction this month, 60% reduction in crime. So maybe we can go to a 3, from a 3 to a 2. And that will increase our tourism. So we want to work together in the things that we can do to improve our economy and improve our safety. For example, I just spoke about the project we have in Acajutla with natural gas. It has been 40% of it has been financed by the U.S. government. And of course, we want to look more of those projects. And if you add up the money, for example, just for that project, it was a $300 million loan to a private company. I mean, the country doesn't own a penny. But the $300 million will be invested here in Acajutla, in Sonsonate, in El Salvador. So that's like 2 years of aid, or 3 years of aid. So like I said before, when Secretary Pompeo came, I said that also to Secretary Ross in the private meeting we had, and we really prefer a lot of investment that a little less. Most of these gangs are international criminal organizations. They have branches in the United States, in Italy, in Honduras, here in El Salvador. So to tackle them, for us, it's a little difficult to tackle to trace their money, to trace their accounts. But we have met with the Attorney General of the United States. We have met with Secretary McAleenan. We have met with our teams have met with INL, with FBI, with DEA, with most of the agencies in the United States that have been helping us to tackle on all these crimes, and it has been very successful. El Salvador is the country in the Northern Triangle that interdicts most of the drugs, as a percentage of the drugs that go through our country. 75% of the drugs that go through El Salvador are interdicted by us. 75%. And sometimes we do even more, and we go in international waters and we interdict drugs that are international waters that we might say, oh, that's not our beef. But no, we go there and we interdict those too. So I mean, all of these things that we're working together in securing El Salvador, and like Secretary McAleenan says, that's very important because we're securing their neighborhood. So it's symbiotic. I mean, they're winning from this, but we're also winning from that too. So, I mean, for me, I would rather have billions of dollars in investment and a lot of help from the United States in making our country safe, inviting tourism, lowering our travel warning. That will represent billions and billions of dollars to our economy, tens of thousands of jobs, and that will be more important than a check of aid. Of course, if the United States want to send us aid, we're all open arms to get it, but we're not going to ask for it because it's U.S. money, it's U.S. taxpayers' money, and we're not entitled to get that money if they don't want it to send it.
Finalizamos así este importante